Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 148 of the Dudes and Beer podcast, slowly creeping on episode 150.
Are we?
Yeah.
We gotta do something for
We
that.
do need to figure out something very, very
Not
special
right now,
for
but-
episode 150. Let's figure that out tonight by the end of the night.
I like it.
I like it.
And, you know, as we come up on 150, as we come up on, of course, a new year of broadcast, there's so much new going on with Dudes and Beer. I cannot wait. Soon, our fantasy NFL commissioner, Matt McPeak, will start joining us coming up once the league has actually started to give us
This is
weekly
that fantasy
updates
football we talked,
on the
huh?
league. It's
So
going to
back
be
in
great.
late summer.
It's going to be fantastic.
Somebody's gonna have to teach me how
He'll
to
be
do
coming
this.
in next week to just kind of talk about it for a little bit in the preliminary stuff.
I don't know how to do that.
But along with that comes a new segment that we're starting that, you know, we kind of had at the beginning of Dudes and Beer, and was a lot of the founding of Dudes and Beer, which is kind of the week in the news, just like different articles that we post to the Dudes and
remember
Beer
us
Facebook
discussing
group.
that, yeah.
And, you know, we used them for a long time as springboard for conversation.
Exactly.
You know, I would send out just like a smattering of articles from the week for you and Nelson, and at the time Fitz to read.
The Dudes and Beer group's great on that.
Yeah. You know, I try to post a lot of news there. So we've got a few articles here. The first one for today is the false tsunami warning sent to the east coast of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. That came out from NBC News this morning, where there was a false warning sent out yet again by the emergency management system, saying that there was a potential for a tsunami on the East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico. PepsiCo also came out contradicting the claim that Doritos will make a lady-friendly chip.
Yeah,
so,
how stupid was that?
Lady-friendly shit.
you know, a lady-friendly chip because
I don't know what they
ladies
mean,
and
but okay,
apparently,
I'm down.
well,
like a
apparently,
smaller crunch and less shit on your fingers. Like, no, nobody cares.
Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo, told Freakonomics last week that Frito-Lay, a subsidiary of the it's a web show about economics and
it's a
stuff
great
like
book
that.
too, Freakonomics.
Would release a low crunch friendly female version of Doritos because she claimed women would prefer to eat quietly in public.
No, we don't.
After the idea received harsh criticism, the company is now contradicting her
I
statements.
didn't realize that was an issue, but okay, I'm down.
In a related story, and I know, right? And like I was telling Amy, what's it going to get to the point of eating snacks politely in public that you're like snorting Dorito powder? You know, like you got like
I
little
don't think
shakers of
that's very
Dorito
polite.
powder or something, like, you know, like, oh, you got a little right here,
Like
you
that
know?
Lucas stuff in a can, you know? Little lime salt.
Like, what the heck? And in a related note, a new study shows that the silicone chemical used to keep French fries from spattering in McDonald's restaurants may actually be a cure for baldness.
So I tried to read it, but there wasn't a lot of information there. Do we have to rub the French fries on our husband's hair?
No.
Or do you just eat the fries?
The scientists from Yokohama National University discovered the chemical. Let me see if I can get this in one shot here. Dimethylpolysiloxane. It's not too bad. A silicone used in McDonald's fry oil to prevent splashing can be used to mass-produce hair follicles on mice.
I'm
so
just
would it be
proof
topical
that that's
or
bunk.
ingestible, though?
It would be
Probably
topical.
topical,
It would
right?
be topically.
So I think it'd be
applied.
cheaper.
I'm
just to
living
rub the
proof
fries
that's a
on your
bunk
head
there.
and
Yeah.
Go for it.
And the New York Times came out saying a newly discovered form of water ice on Neptune is extraordinarily strange. It's being called, in Monday in the Journal of Nature Physics, the new form called superionic water consists of a rigid lattice of oxygen ions. So it's interesting. Like instead of the typical V, it's actually a lattice work of hydrogen and oxygen that make the ice.
Is that similar to like heavy water?
A little bit different. A little bit different. Yeah, because heavy water is used, of course, to help purify nuclear materials, things like that.
Yeah.
But as opposed to ions being added to the water, this is actually like a new form of how water is actually constructed.
I wonder if humans could drink that.
Cool.
So yeah, it's going to lead to hopefully a whole new application of materials and all sorts of new science. Of course, out of CNN Monday was the Super Bowl anti-terrorism documents that were found left in the air pocket of a plane right next to the emergency manual on how to get out of the plane if there's an accident. Apparently, there was a Homeland Security drill in Minnesota for a possible anthrax attack. And these documents, including the person's name and travel itinerary, were found in the back pocket. And who doesn't do that? I mean, honestly, who doesn't leave some stuff in the back pocket of a plane because, hey, I'm not using this. But it does say classified, and how about we shred that before we get rid of it? Was the actions?
Well,
but that was found.
Fine.
And in another note,
crazy news.
Our flat earther Mike Hughes, who was trying to launch himself in his rocket, had yet another failed attempt. I cannot imagine.
Don't you get one chance at that when it fails?
Well, granted, you get a few chances at a rocket launch, but here's the thing: he may not be that good at science.
Well, no. Flat Earth, they're not good at science.
You got to kind of understand some orbital science in order to get a rocket into the air to begin with.
I mean, the Tesla car made it up.
I was going to say, look at that. Dude, that was some great
on
news.
another
I
note,
love that.
out of The Guardian, a man was arrested in Florida over an alleged plot to kidnap Lana Del Rey during her concert in Florida. Always in Florida, dude. Yeah. Always with the craziness in Florida.
No, my saying is always in Colorado.
Dude, if you watch, you say that it's definitely Florida man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's wild. Florida has some
Florida
crazy
man
news.
wrestles with alligator while high on meth today.
Yeah, there was a
zombie man eats a face.
Our friends at the Scary Dad podcast just did their episode 69, all about Florida man and Florida man news. And oh man, some of them were just insane. There was one where a man showed up with a wet sponge on his head, demanding potatoes from his neighbor.
Does that work?
I don't know. But if you got to get some potatoes. Out of Engadget, we have the amazing news that banks are actually banning credit card purchases of cryptocurrency online.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week.
Absolutely.
We're talking Bitcoin, huh?
And just the whole, not just them, but Ethereum, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. They're like, hey, listen, we can't trace back this blockchain as to who actually started it, so we're not going to let you actually use your bank account to buy this currency. Ooh. So they've actively put a lockdown on people's ATM cards and credit cards from being able to buy currencies online like that. Out of Ars Technica,
that's why the chip stopped working on my credit card yesterday.
Were you trying to buy cryptocurrencies?
I don't know. I drink a lot.
I like that answer.
Right?
Entirely possible.
I don't know what I do at 2 a.m.
No, I check the bank the next day.
That's what my social media platform's for, to find out what I did after 2 a.m. Out of Ars Technica, we have the crazy news, and I'm trying to get a hold of Billy Mitchell to dispute it. Donkey Kong's scoreboard officially strips Billy Mitchell of his high score claims. Billy Mitchell is, of course, the person that broke the famous high score on Donkey Kong, one of the hardest games ever to play for all of us nerds out there. But apparently there is some conflagration as to whether or not he used a game emulator to capture levels, continue doing them, and use those to piece together his levels of Donkey Kong, which made his million point high score. And that's what they're trying to prove right now.
Well, how long has he had this score? How long has it been set?
Close to 10 years, I think, that it's been set, but it's been disputed ever since it was set.
And so it's got an asterisk.
It's been out there for a while. Yeah.
Interesting.
In Olympic news, out of NBC News, we have 110,000 condoms for Winter Olympics. Pushes the topic of sex in South Korea.
Winter.
It's not just South Korea, it's all the Olympics. I mean, you got a bunch of really young, really fit, really attractive people in a small little area who are all competitive. You know they're going to be doing it it.
It's going to happen.
Time.
Oh, no, and that's just it.
Sounds like throwing a bunch of rabbits in a cage.
Yeah,
and
totally.
like
And they don't want to
said,
get pregnant because
the number falls.
they got to work out.
The number they were donated by a South Korean condom manufacturer, convenience company.
Donated.
Absolutely.
Good publicity.
And it was actually paled in comparison to the 450,000 distributed during the Summer Olympics in Rio.
There's going to be some pregnant Olympians this year. Although with the norovirus,
it's the Winter Olympics also,
right.
so I mean there aren't quite as many participants either. It's not like every country sends representative to the Winter Olympics like they do the Summer Olympics. And finally, out of SciPost, Facebook addiction linked to narcissism and other psychological factors.
I believe it.
Worldwide users spend a lot of time interacting on Facebook, and other platform members are presenting themselves. Some of the members lose control over their Facebook use and develop a strong psychological need to stay online despite possible negative consequences of this behavior. And that's something that we talk about all the time.
Is that like when you're drunk and you do it?
Well, not just that, but it's denying the fact.
I got to figure out if I bought Bitcoin.
And it's something that we've talked about so many times on the show, even before you came along, Julie, is the presence on social media and the fact that, dude, people are fired on the daily for things that they say and do on social media. Like, it's come out more than once where a CEO in college 4 or 5 years ago posted some stuff on social media, and it comes out and they got to give up their position in the company that they helped start.
Be a little smart, guys.
And it really, I mean, good guy, be a little smart. We're talking about a Tide Pod Challenge generation right here.
Tide Pod. The Tide Pod Challenge.
People our generation talk crap about their work on Facebook.
I'm with you.
Even if it's on privacy settings, somebody could screenshot that you're friends with and send it to Amy and
I'll lick a frog, but
I've tried to get to the point of not posting pictures of shows that I work.
Yeah.
Unless it's one that HC Universal was hired to produce. Other than that, man, there's proprietary shit up on those screens.
Even Liam's robot baby, I asked if it was okay with his teacher if I put a picture of it up on Facebook.
That's right, because that baby's biometrical data will be up there forever.
Yep.
True that.
This
that
baby's
robot
gonna have
baby.
a bright robot future.
That's right. What is the robot code of ethics for the age of consent for robots and putting them on social media?
I don't know. I was just thinking for the class purposes. This teacher might have a problem with it. She did not.
The age of consent of a robot. Wow.
I would
We're
say if the robot
rights.
looks over 18.
Well, yeah. I mean,
right.
one hopes so. And on that note, that brings us into our conversation for the evening. We are glad to welcome a fantastic representative, Tony Weber from Indivisible Austin, to come in and talk about the ever-changing political climate in our country, the way that things are going down, not just between people, but between parties politically, and what's going on in our country right now. So let's start off with you, Tony Weber, how you became involved with Indivisible and what Indivisible Austin is all about.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. I've heard the podcast on more than one occasion, and
great.
We're
could be a good thing, could be a bad thing.
Depends on the show.
Depends on the episode, right?
Absolutely. It floats from show to show.
But I guess my involvement with Indivisible goes back to the morning after the election.
Okay.
And we woke up, and when my daughter went to bed, things were still uncertain. And when we woke up, she came downstairs and she made breakfast, and I told her what happened, and she started crying. And it wasn't because she was expecting to have a first female president or anything like that. It's that she said she was afraid for other kids in school who might be afraid for their families, who might be afraid for that they get deported and things along those lines. And I told her at that point that we were going to be okay, and let's be honest. We're white and middle class. We're gonna be fine.
Sure,
we're gonna be fine. So I told her that we were going to be okay, but that we were going to stand up for people who needed their rights protected, and we were going to try and do the right thing, and when good people of goodwill come together, good things can happen.
That's right.
And that. And then I took her to school, and then I tried to figure out,
like, how do I make this happen?
How do I make
now?
this happen? Exactly. And then, so there were immediate the Women's March was the day after the day after the inauguration, and then there were the protests at the airports once they.
I'm so sorry, Democracy, not today.
Yeah. Because
they were not the most rousing chants. So I don't think I don't think many people noticed. But I think maybe 10 people passed by because it was the first cold day in Austin of the year.
That day.
We got to also go up to the Senator Cornyn's office and talk to his whoever it is in his staff about the tax bill and our concerns with it. And did our civic duty, at least in that fashion.
Sure.
So how were they when you went into the office?
They're very polite.
Really?
Yeah.
They're extremely polite.
Nice.
They offer you Dr. Pepper. They want to see if you have any water.
Yeah.
They sit down. The person's very attentive, takes notes. Then you leave, and those notes go
into a shredder.
That is certainly what it feels like. I'm certain that all of that is compiled, and they're adding up stuff.
It kind of feels that way no matter which representative's office you walk in to say stuff. It kind of feels the shredder moment.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think since all this began, I've gotten just about on first name basis with the people who usually answer at Representative Williams' office and Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn's offices.
Sure.
So I'm a frequent dialer for them.
Good job.
And I
got them on speed dial.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the more important things that we've discovered or that we've hit upon is that those folks that are answering the phones now, even if it doesn't make a difference, even if Cornyn and Cruz are going to vote against what I personally would prefer to have happen.
Sure.
Their staff are the people that are going to be running in 15 years. And if they see that people are angry and responsive now,
that's right.
Then they will hopefully learn a lesson from that.
Well, and I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make with the political arena to begin with is the concept of immediate change to begin with. There was a documentary I was watching recently about classified materials and things and why the president is skipped over in so many classified things because he's literally seen as a transitional employee.
Mm-hmm. You have UFOs,
you are not on a need to know basis because you're here for 4 years, bro. Mm-hmm. This is like a 20-year-long program, so your need to know just went down like 80%.
It's still going to be in baby steps.
You don't need to know about Area 51.
Things take so long to get funding and to go through that, like, it'll be two presidents, kind of like the extraplanetary Marines that they're talking about having.
That's
quite literally. It's something that is up for funding right now. That the only way that happens is that there are projects showing its feasibility and that and the need for it. The funding for that started 15, 20 years ago.
That's nuts.
It's crazy, but
I'm so
it's
glad we're going down
true.
the aliens path instead of the Star Trek path.
I'd love to, and it is the fact of this stuff takes it's such a long play that if you look at it in terms of a term, whether it be a term of Congress or a term of presidency, it really is kind of a short-sighted point of view. Because 4 years is like nothing.
Yeah, change takes time, and good change takes a lot of time. A lot of work on the ground, and a lot of like trying to build relationships with people that you don't really normally have a connection with.
Absolutely.
That's been one of the other big lessons that I think we've been trying to learn and embrace at Indivisible. Indivisible Austin. So Indivisible is sort of this national movement.
Yes.
It was started off with the Indivisible Guide, which was written by some former congressional staffers who were out of a job after the election, I
Sure.
believe. And they took basically the lessons of the Tea Party and turned it and how they were effective and turned it into something
Absolutely.
that sort of the progressive movement could embrace. And so that's how they started it. They started it, and I think, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I think there's something like 10,000 Indivisible groups out there nationally right now. Huh. And there is a national Indivisible, but nobody reports to them.
Yeah.
We don't report to them.
I did a little Google stalking and went to the website. Now, I mean, it is the fact of every chapter is their own chapter. They are autonomous. There is no head of Indivisible singularly that leads the movement or anything like that. Right.
And so, National wants to try and coordinate strategy, and pretty often the major chapters push back. We push back pretty frequently because we think there are better ways to go, things like that.
Sure.
And sometimes they take our advice, and we all move on a better path together, and sometimes they don't, and we take some different avenues.
Absolutely.
But we stay in connection because we know that overall our goals are pretty much the same.
The message is about the same.
Yeah.
Well, and really the concept for me there is also the fact of as important as national politics are. Right. No offense, folks, that has very little to do with the direct impact on your life. It's local and state. Local and state is what impacts your life 90%.
Absolutely.
The federal government impacts your life by maybe 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hey, if we really wanted to affect some change, I'd say let's start putting in some real term limits again. Where it's no, let's try to prevent politician from being a career move.
Mm-hmm. Like Congress.
Where you end up with people like Orrin Hatch in charge of committees for 40 friggin' years,
right?
And stuff do you really expect to affect change that way?
He's 60 years away from his hard travel roots.
Yeah,
and so maybe he does have a little too much distance from that to really understand the plight of the poor these days.
Yeah, and that's just it.
I can't agree with you enough about. The realities of change starting at the ground level,
absolutely,
at the local and the state level. We are trying to embrace that more. Indivisible is this very, very new organization. Indivisible Austin is one of the first chapters to organize, and we are just about to hit our 1 year anniversary.
Fantastic,
1 year, awesome.
And then, but in that time, we've realized that we're very focused nationally. We need to focus locally and statewide.
That's right.
Also, so we've been we try to, since we don't have a lot of the expertise on the local stuff, we've been trying to find who our allies are so that we can support them here on the ground. So. Recently, we've worked with Austin Justice Coalition to try and influence negotiations with the police union contract here in Austin.
Oh yeah. They still haven't gotten an agreement yet.
It's still not an agreement.
No, and it's something that very few people know. I mean, Officer Eddie Craig pointed it out whenever he was on our program that we do not actually have a charter for a real police department in Austin. We basically have a privatized police department. That's under contract with the city.
Okay, I didn't know. I don't know that the basis of that sort of it's foundation of the organization.
Pretty interesting.
But with
that's what I would think is really interesting is that they're renegotiating something that they don't even have yet already. It seems.
Well, right now, so the police contract ran out a few months, a couple months ago.
Yeah, I've been keeping up on that one.
Yeah, and so. There were, I think, the entire city council voted against the contract for different reasons.
Different
because
reasons.
The police union was very powerful in Austin, and so they were getting a huge, it's the biggest part of the city budget, and they were getting a huge year-over-year increase in their budget. And sort of fire and EMS were left behind pretty significantly.
Yeah.
But also, from our point of view, we were concerned more with police accountability.
Oh, absolutely, man. Good God.
Austin
you're talking about thousands of sexual assault cases right now that more than likely will never be able to be solved because of the handling of evidence.
Right.
and the evidence cooler and stuff like that.
I was going to say, yeah, they
horrible infractions.
There was mold found on a lot of the cases and stuff.
Yeah,
and when there is a complaint about unjustified force under the old contract, what would happen is there was no other contract like this in the entire U.S. In the old contract, what would happen is a police officer, first of all, someone would have to file a complaint within 90 days of the incident.
Yep.
And otherwise, nothing could possibly happen. So if you're at
Makes
90,
sense.
if you're at 91 days, well, if you're someone who got roughed up by a police officer, you're intimidated.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 months is not
enough to
enough
make you
time.
like,
yeah.
feel like you're
it's not enough to not feel unvictimized.
Right. And so there's that, and then if there is a complaint
Or if
filed,
you're like in a coma.
the police officer is allowed to see all of the evidence that has been collected and all of the statements before.
Yeah.
Well before they make their own statement.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this was
So they can
out
tailor
of
exactly
kilter.
what they're going to
That's
say.
what I was going to
Out of
say.
kilter.
That's
You
kind
know,
of
and I'll
give
just say,
somebody an advantage almost.
Oh, big time.
being a police officer is an incredibly difficult job. I don't personally know a lot of police officers, but
I do.
I have a great deal of respect for the fortitude it takes to commit yourself to going out there every day. But everyone needs to be accountable.
Yeah.
And that's what our support of Austin Justice Coalition and their efforts and what the contract was about.
And that was something that I found very interesting whenever Eddie Craig was on, was that you have to understand that most police officers that you meet are actual law enforcement officers. They have not taken an oath like a constitutional sheriff to protect
and serve.
You're seeing it from the point of view of somebody's rights, and that's why I said whenever you got pulled over by a sheriff, thank God, instead of a normal police officer.
Yeah.
Like, at least the sheriff is going to respect your rights a little bit more. Typically,
it took him a long time to take me down, but
So Austin still have a contract?
So Austin is still under contract. I think I haven't been tracking it very closely. I know we have a new city manager, and so the police union was going to start renegotiations with them at some point soon.
I think in a couple months or something.
Yeah, and so we'll continue to support Austin Justice Coalition in that, and we also we supported the Work Strong Austin Coalition and they're pressing for in Austin, making sure that anyone who works in Austin, even if they're hourly worker like a waiter, they get the right to paid sick leave.
Yes.
Yes,
awesome.
I've heard that lately, and I think that's great that people are standing up for that.
Yeah.
I feel like now is a good time to kind of push on that one because of the flu. Because everybody's
exactly.
super paranoid about it.
Your waiter, your grocery checker.
Yeah.
They are living paycheck to paycheck, and they have to make their money.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
And-
yeah.
Not just that, your food prep worker. Your food I'm not going to deny the fact that I've gone to work with the fucking flu. I have gone to work sick. Like, as long as I don't have a fever, I'm not contagious. I'm working.
Yeah.
Because that's how I pay my bills.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I work for a place that hourly wage, I get paid probably less than what Walmart pays, but I count on my tips.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I have to make sure I show up to work to make those tips.
Right.
So if I'm sick, I'm taking a big hit.
Yeah. So even if you're sick, that's a good point. I didn't even thought of that. If you're really a tip worker, even if you get that sick pay, you're still coming up short. That's a rough situation.
Yeah, because it's going to be based on whatever your minimum is. And there's actually a new brewery that just started. I think it's called 248 Brewery or something like that. But the name is based on the minimum wage of bartenders in Texas.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And the idea that that's their minimum wage. Like, there's a totally separate minimum wage for people in the food service industry than there is nationally.
Yeah.
And that's just the most jacked up thing in the world.
Yeah, I will pay another $1.25 for my enchiladas.
All day long.
All day long. Give your waiters at least minimum wage.
Well,
plus
tips. At least minimum wage plus tips. Yeah,
that was something that we were talking about before the show, before we came on air. Just the idea of livable wage, and that kind of stuff.
To be specific, I am for a livable wage.
Absolutely.
Nice.
The problem that I see is the fact
I
that
figured.
Gotta live.
Yeah.
a rising tide raises all ships.
Right.
So when your minimum wage goes up, inevitably the cost of living in that area will go up.
Where the minimum wage is $15 is going to show a higher quality of life than we're at $7.
I think that personally that's where it's going to land. I think
though it's gonna have to be a 5 to 10 year study. Like it's gotta be.
I agree with that as well.
Because there's gonna be
2 or 3.
there's gonna be the initial
it's gonna
raise
take like
and
a
stuff.
decade.
Absolutely.
But looking at large scale economic experiments, we can see with the current the tax bill that just passed, we see where we're heading with that. If you look at Kansas. Yeah. Kansas passed something very similar, and they have been a wreck ever since.
Well, granted, the one thing I was worried about whenever ACA was pushed through was that it was based on Romney Care.
Right.
And I know more than one person in the great state of Massachusetts that was utterly shafted by Romney Care.
Right.
That were, single or even dual parent family houses with 3-4 kids, where come the end of the year, they had to pay like $3,500 in tax.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't afford Romney Care. And it's like, if I couldn't afford the insurance, how can I afford the fine?
Yeah, it's a tough spot. We're going national right now, but
we are.
I really wish that. What was his name? He was the former senator from Connecticut, who was Gore's vice presidential pick.
Oh God.
Oh Jesus. Here we go.
Anyway, there would have been a public option in Obamacare with the ACA had it not been for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had 60 votes. He said
Lieberman.
Yep.
That's
they
the
had
one.
60 votes. He decided he switched it to no, and they couldn't get him to budge. And I only can assume that he got some lobbying contacts from
my only
healthcare corporation
even recorded on this show, and I don't know how many episodes. My only issue with the ACA when it came out was the mandatory tax if you didn't apply for it. That was really my only issue amongst everything, was how can you possibly tax me for my personal decision? And granted, that's been removed.
And it has been removed now.
Thank God.
We'll see how it affects the healthcare market.
What's that old thing? Taxation without representation?
Well, that's
Represented with
you do get the
health insurance.
representation.
yeah.
Of gerrymandered representation, but still.
Exactly.
But going back, there were law. I mean, obviously there's the auto insurance example, and then there is way back in the day there was a law that required. Basically all able-bodied citizens to own a firearm.
Yep.
And so there were because at that point it was an actual well-regulated militia that kept things safe.
And technically still should be. We, by all constitutional rights, should not have a funded federal army. But that's a whole separate episode in and of itself.
Going back closer to home, we also, Indivisible Austin are all these little, every district, every congressional district has at least one or two of their own little groups that we don't run them, but we work with them. And then there's a separate group that we partner with called Texas Ledge, and they coordinate all the stuff at the State House. And so they were very involved in protesting against the SB4, the Sanctuary Cities bill, and then also the bathroom bill, which fortunately Joe Strauss shut down in the House, which he was then sanctioned for by the Republican Party.
Sure.
Because of course he was.
Right. But really in the Texas legislature, we're just playing defense.
Yep, that's got to be so exhausting for those guys and women.
Right. So that's
dudes, please.
Dudes for those guys.
Dudes.
It is the preferred term.
Yes.
The proper nomenclature.
Right. So that's what we try and do locally and at a state level. And then
so like you were saying, all these other little individual indivisible ones are like on their own, they do their own thing kind of deal. They don't have to report back to you, right?
Right. But like we have, we talk to the leaders of all the little groups every week and
That's so
coordinate.
cool.
Like, so I would think, I guess, you guys are all on the same level as like the core objective kind of deal, right?
Right. Our core objective for Indivisible Austin is we defend democracy and we oppose authoritarianism. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Yeah. We are nonpartisan. Because of the current situation we have, I think we will be. I'm very confident that we will be working pretty much in support of electing Democrats, because of reality of what we have right now in D.C. is that, in my opinion, the reality of what we have in D.C. is that the majority leader and the Speaker of the House are aiding and abetting the Trump administration in flouting the law in numerous ways.
Well, did you see today that he said, or maybe it was yesterday, but they put it up today,
Shut down the government?
that everybody that didn't clap for him during the State of their Union should be considered treasonous?
Well, and granted, we have a man in office that, and I said it before the election ever happened, we were having our first reality TV election.
Right.
Straight up.
Yeah.
And it was interesting talking with my buddy Billy Stewart the other night. Even the concept of how this election was possibly the way in which to shut down future dark horse candidates. Because if you look especially at elections since the time you were in high school,
right.
Talking about the Clinton election with Ross Perot, things like that, that was really the first time that we had
I remember.
like a viable third party where it was like, hey, wait a minute, like this dude got a good popular swing going towards something either blue or red. And that was really the first time that like a salvo had been fired by an independent party, and I don't know, but probably since the communists.
He was
were
even
allowed to
pissing
run
off
for
his own
shit.
side.
But he did toward the end. And then there came Ron Paul, which got very close once again, close enough that they were like, hey, wait a minute, we don't need to let this dude debate. Like, at all. Despite the fact that he's got a third of the popular vote, like, you are not even allowed to step on the stage of debate.
That's wrong.
And was it really the fact of, especially with really the only independent candidate that I think, had he remained with an I behind his name, Bernie would have gone a lot farther in the election than had he joined the Democrat. Because there's stuff going on between the Democrats and Republicans, and Trump and Hillary would have been going on with or without Bernie being in the Democratic Party.
He could have rose above.
It would have served him much better to actually stay independent.
It could have been the case.
We could have actually had our first independent president because of all the horse crap going on. But he just kind of tossed in his hat and went Democrat, and it was like,
well,
now
he wanted the backing of the Democratic Party too.
Well, yeah, but you're not beating the Clinton war machine ever.
Ever.
I challenge you to find a state, local, or federal election where like they didn't just like destroy whatever their opponent was, even within their own their own party.
2008.
Obama.
Obama won.
He did.
Again, so obviously
he did.
I would love it if there were.
And once again, dark horse candidate. Same thing with Trump. You're bringing in people that,
Don't put Obama and Trump ever in the same. There's no similarities.
I'm just talking about people with the quote-unquote experience.
Wouldn't have
with
expected.
the
You
experience.
wouldn't have expected, sure.
People that you wouldn't have expected. So is the concept to shut down the dark horse candidate.
Right.
And just go, hey, look at what happened last time. We can't have that happen
So in
again.
other words, they're picking a wild card over like what they normally do.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Yeah.
I think before, if you want to have a viable third party, because that's what you need a party structure.
You do. Absolutely.
A presidential election is a huge thing.
Yep.
It's all over the nation. And so you need a party structure. And before we can have viable third parties, we're going to need to see independents elected to dog catcher and to city council and to state legislatures. Just like you said, it's local, then you go national. And if you can start putting people in those places,
the eyes are the great Senate, minority in Congress and Senate.
Yeah, there's like
great minority.
Yeah, you count probably on one hand.
Yeah.
It's hard for them not to join into the D or join into the R, whichever one they're closer to. But even Hillary Clinton said it on Meet the Press.
Money on
right after it was just before the first debate on PBS, where she was talking about how Bernie had been brought in because the Democratic Party was the party of the center left, and for years they had the center, and Bernie was bringing in the left. And it was like, ooh, wow, did you just openly admit that you were bringing him in to cull his votes? That's kind of crazy, but you really just did.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at interesting. So this is just Tony talking.
Sure.
Indivisible.
Go ahead. No. Totally different from Indivisible.
What I don't like is an independent candidate running, and it happening once every 4 years for president.
Yeah.
And taking up a lot of oxygen with something that is not going to work.
Yes.
Because they haven't put in the work on the ground.
Sure.
They haven't built a party.
Yeah.
And I find that frustrating. I understand.
Well, and that was the example with people like Jill Stein and stuff like that who piggybacked toward the end of the election.
But what I'll say about what Bernie did and what Hillary said is that Bernie did change the Democratic Party, because right now the de facto stance of the party is we're for universal health care. Mm-hmm. And that it was not.
It was not.
It was not the stance of the party before Bernie ran.
No,
and, so that's
pretty cool.
No, she fought openly against universal health care for quite a while in Congress and stuff like that.
Well, I don't
At least
think
the way
that
it
they
stood.
knew how well received it was going to be until everybody rallied behind certain things about Bernie, and they really did embrace him as part of our whole thing now.
And I don't know that she was so much against universal health care as she thought it was just impractical to try and implement. She's such a technocrat.
No, absolutely.
On top of being part of a dynasty, she's a real technocrat.
Well, and it's the fact that, hey, man, she's been involved in politics since good God, since the Nixon age, and just the fact of that alone shows that she's been through the battle, she's been through the discussion in more than one place, whether she was a senator's aide or something like that, or first lady, or what have you, or even senator. Or congresswoman.
Yeah, I kind of figured she was already president
for the state of New York
during Bill's session.
Well,
no, I'm just joking. I'm joking. That's a bad joke.
I think that was quite honestly part of what killed her was people saying that she'd earned it. I think that was it. That ended up toward the end being a big issue where people were saying, "Wait, you don't earn." Like your shot at the presidency, like that. It doesn't really work.
You hung out long enough.
Oh, that too. Absolutely.
I don't think the Comey memo helped.
No. I don't think I don't think the funding of that helped. I don't think. Yeah. It was one of the. We were talking about that outside beforehand. Like, hey, you can bring up Russia all you want, but unfortunately, that brings up way too many questions on the other side too. And if we're going to indict one person, we need to indict a lot of people. Because
whenever there's secrets of the government that pop out,
there was somebody that stood there in office at the same time while that was going on.
So they're both
that was in like daily memos where it was okay, that may be happening, but
Well, no, I
heads
think
roll on both sides.
The story
heads roll on all sides.
The story has come out pretty clearly is that the intelligence community had identified that this was a Russian operation.
Yeah.
They had identified that they were actively trying to get Trump elected. I think at some point the FBI was waffling on whether or not that was the case or whether they just were trying to disrupt things. But
sure.
But on the whole, they had identified that they were trying to get Trump elected. And the administration brought together the congressional leaders and said, we want to put out a bipartisan statement just letting the public know that this is happening. And everyone said, yes, okay, this is probably the right thing to do for America, except for Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell said, if you do this, I will come out against it, and I'll say you're being partisan. And that's where that lies.
Yeah.
You know, you can say Obama was too cautious. He was a very cautious guy.
He was.
You know, there may have been. I'm certain there were better ways to handle it.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it was.
It just opens up a whole.
Really wishes
it opens up a whole box of pancake mix ready for a jamboree on a Saturday. Is the problem?
Right.
Everything from the DNC and the rigging of their primary to. Everything on the back end with Russia and the dossier and just all kinds of stuff. Well, not even the death of Seth Rich, unfortunately.
The government because it's got intrigue. I think if it was just like functioning well and boring, you wouldn't have any interest in it at all.
So it's like a real reality show.
No, that's the horrifying thing is that, yes, we are actively living a reality show, man. I'd love to say that we are not actively living House of Cards. We should kind of
get off the horse a little bit.
Dude, if it was boring, things would actually be great.
That might be trying to go against Abbott.
Let's see, there's Lupe Valdez. Former sheriff from Dallas County. I kind of like her.
Sheriff, I remember her.
Yeah, she resigned.
Stepping up.
Yeah, she resigned from being sheriff, and I kind of like her, but she's a little bit of a. I think she needs to find her center as a candidate. She needs to focus on and get a hold of her.
She sure is ambitious to go for a high office, huh?
Somebody's got to do it.
And
then there is.
It's a logical step from sheriff, quite honestly, for someone that's politically aligned, because sheriff is an elected office, and it's right under judgeships. It's right under city council.
And judgeships in Texas have a weird level of power.
They do.
Yeah. But then the other big one that I know of is the son of Mark White, who was. Mark White was a Democratic governor even before Ann Richards.
I was going to say that's where that name rings a bell. Yeah.
He's solid also, but I have
and Mark White was really liked, if I remember right. Yeah.
I believe he was. In terms of Democratic governors, I believe there was Ann and there was him before that. But I don't.
Early '80s.
Yeah, I was. Kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, and looking at things from a local light, from a state light, as Julie said earlier, we do live in an interesting state when it comes to laws and how laws are passed, how committees happen, things like that. But what can people do to actively get involved? Because I think that's where the leap happens for most people. Most people tend to follow whatever's in whatever paper they read or whatever digital media they read. They don't necessarily read opposing point of views in this day and age. I akin it a lot on this show to most people would be turning in a term paper with 1 to 2 sources, which is not allowable. Like you can't turn in a term paper with 1 or 2 sources on your thesis. It just didn't work. You at least need 5, and hopefully a couple of them with opposing views.
I do remember.
Yeah, the opposing point of view thing is cool. Like Liam just had to debate against the Dreamers. And it was so hard for him because he like staunchly was totally opposed to it, but he had to like do the research. He had to put it forward. Then at the end, he's like, by the way, this is total bullshit. Like, this is not what I believe. Sure. But he still had to do it. And he's like,
and
the more I read and the more I understood, I don't believe, like, how do people think that? How do people live that way? Right. I was like, I don't know, dude, but good for you for doing the work.
I think if you're someone who is saying, I don't like the way the state is running, or I don't like the way the federal government is running right now, and you're in Austin, I would say, first of all, you can go to indivisibleaustin.com and sign up for our weekly actions email list. Every Monday we send out a list of things that we're hoping people will do because it's people power. It's all of us getting together and calling our representatives and showing
You're
up.
Stronger in numbers, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're a republic, but we are a democratic republic, and so we need to make sure that the people that we elect to represent us understand our will.
I'm glad to hear you define us as a republic,
right?
To begin with, and not a democracy.
We're
not to define our government as a form of voting,
right?
But as an actual form of government,
right?
A representative republic.
You can have a democracy as a form of government. It's just it's
right.
a bit of a hassle.
It's a little bit. It's really more of a form of voting.
Yeah,
it's.
And we're not an oligarchic republic. We are kind of an oligarchic.
We've become an oligarchic republic, absolutely, over the last 30, 40 years.
We can talk about dark money
and
stuff like that. But
we can go into Niantic, all kinds of shit.
You will be brought back for that episode.
So far as I can tell, everybody, just so you know, a little bit of research was actually done into the funding of Independent Austin or Indivisible Austin, also. And so far as I can tell, all the money is clean. There is nobody like the Koch brothers or anything like that behind the funding.
Can you imagine the Koch brothers caring about Indivisible Austin?
You would be surprised who people like that, George Soros, other people who have vested interest in politics.
I'll take
so we are a.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. George Soros, if you want to give me some money, feel free to give me some money.
I'm still looking for my check for showing up at all those protests.
I know, right?
Where's that Soros cash?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. Is that I've yet to link that to anything like that. Anything like that.
Indivisible Austin is a 501c4, which means we are a nonprofit organization.
That's right.
We're not a charity, so you can't get a tax write-off. But
you're not a not-for-profit.
We are a
nonprofit.
We're a nonprofit. So there's nobody basically getting
money
from what we're doing.
Right.
But and I can't give you the specific definition. It has to do with only a certain percentage of our work can be specifically political.
That's right.
We can advocate about issues as much as we want.
That's right.
Which are in their nature political.
Sure.
So we don't coordinate with any candidates or anything like that. I believe we will be endorsing some candidates coming up soon.
I'm sure you would.
But those candidates don't know that we are endorsing them. We won't be talking to them about that.
Oh, I see.
Because that would be illegal.
Right.
Or seeking funding from them for endorsing you.
Yes, certainly not. No.
Yeah.
So we're funded by individual donations.
Yeah.
It's all pretty straightforward on the
up and up. It's very much on the up and up.
We don't have a 990 filed yet. So
So with the candidates that you guys have coming up, is that bipartisan? Allegedly.
Roger. Okay, so
Good point, Julie.
Allegedly, I like that.
I mean,
so
steal that from Chris.
Well, there's nonpartisan and then there's bipartisan.
It rubs off.
So that event, if you go to Facebook and look up Indivisible Austin, we have our events list, and that event is on February 18th, and it's coming up. Coming up pretty soon.
So these events are on your website.
Yeah, they're on the website, indivisibleaustin.com. We're on Facebook at just look for Indivisible Austin.
Yeah, just put it in there.
And on Twitter at IndivisibleATX.
Yep.
So coming up on the 18th, we have the candidates for the 25th district and the 47th district congressional districts. We're going to have a Meet the Candidates event for them. It is. I'm not organizing that one personally. And we're not organizing it. Actually, it's one of the regional groups, one of the district groups that's actually organizing it. Roger Williams would be more than welcome to show up. Roger Williams doesn't show his face in Austin, and the only people that he will meet with in Austin are law enforcement officers and veterans.
We could arrange that.
Yeah. We should put that together.
But
it's up our alley.
But he picks his law enforcement officers and veterans pretty closely as well.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't like.
And also, it's a long drive from up in he lives. The 25th district is one of these ridiculously gerrymandered districts. It runs from up near Fort Worth all the way down to Austin.
So
because
of course it does.
That's a big one.
And he doesn't even live in the district. He lives 40 miles outside of the the closest population center outside of Conroe, which is the closest population center from where he lives. But he's very wealthy.
People in Conroe really have their finger on the pulse.
Over there around UT somewhere, or AT, or whatever, A&M, I mean.
Right.
I had it all missed.
No, Conroe's way up there by Fort Worth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure. And so he's very wealthy, and he speaks with an impressive Texas accent. So that's what happens. So and that's gerrymandering is obviously an issue that we feel strongly about as well,
and should feel strongly about it. Everybody should feel strongly about that because it is how they go about making sure that votes from a certain area lean or key in a certain way.
100%.
Oh,
yes, it is.
Yeah, no, and it happens on both sides of the fence.
It sure
happens.
It's a good way to swing something your way. Right?
So we're right now there are Texas. It has a law. There's a lawsuit that Texas is involved in that Lloyd Doggett's district has been declared unconstitutional because it intentionally suppresses minority votes.
Sure.
And then another district in Texas as well has been brought up for that as well.
But it's been a minute that those happened, and still nothing's changing.
It's going to be. I don't even know if that one's going to be resolved in time for the election, which is very convenient.
Probably not.
But what will happen sooner? What will happen this summer is that there is before the Supreme Court there is a case out of Wisconsin where the Supreme Court has always said, well, gerrymandering is a political thing. We don't get involved in politics. However, if you could show us like some specific way in which show us the specificity.
It violates civil rights. It violates civil liberties. Something like that. Something unconstitutional.
They wanted a specific standard.
Absolutely.
And Wisconsin brought a case where they were able to show a specific standard that something like 60% of the votes. Again, don't quote me on the numbers here, but 60% of the votes for the state legislature went for Democratic candidates, but 65% of the seats went to Republican representatives because of the way the gerrymandering. So they were put together a mathematical formula that said, that looked at how many votes were quote unquote wasted, intentionally by the structure. And I have high hopes that the court will rule for that because gerrymandering does not.
It doesn't behoove anybody.
No, and then
it doesn't behoove
anybody. It only helps people in power. And I'm perfectly comfortable with California having to redistrict if Texas does too.
I've said for years that unfortunately we are subject to a very old system, but what is still a fairly valid system when it comes to the Electoral College, in how regions are represented. Because without the Electoral College, like the people of Montana and shit like that would have like no representation whatsoever. Like your vote would mean absolutely nothing. Without Electoral College, it would basically be like down here in Texas, Florida, the Northeast, and California.
As much as anybody else's. Every one person would have one vote.
Yep. And so, all the money's going to go to the major media markets.
Yes.
But, right now, someone in Montana, their vote actually counts a lot more than anyone than a single person in California because of the way that the delegates for the Electoral College
I was going to say the electoral, right?
Well, yeah, because they've got to have...
get divided up based upon a specific formula that's partially population, but also partially based upon just you have this many people in Congress.
Yeah.
And so that and since they've limited it to 538 electors, people get
it was more than 5-1 for Montana versus California on the last election.
Well,
remember it was like super skewed.
Well, and it is due to representation versus populace.
Sounds
and
like maybe
the
old styles might be outdated.
Well, it is outdated, but at the same time, without that, it's a very precarious system, and it's hard to just drop.
That's the thing. That'd be a humongous change.
Yeah, it would be a
huge
crazy
change.
Like there would have to be new laws written for election. There's a whole process that has to be gone through.
It would
change
require a constitutional convention.
Absolutely.
But it almost seems like it needs to
good
be
God!
done.
If you're having
If you have that right now,
if you're having a constitutional convention to begin with, there is going to be some crazy.
You want the vice president in there before you do that.
There's going to be some crazy changes going on if there's a constitutional convention, my friend. Like parts of California are leaving and making their own state. Like they've literally put forth for that already. Like, hey, this part of California needs to be a totally separate state.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Because we do not live under the same tax burden as the rest of them. We aren't in debt; they are, and we get to be lumped in with them and pay their debt for no good reason. You know, and then of
Texas
course
could easily be a couple different.
It's like
states.
Redoing I-35.
Actually, I've said for years that Texas should build a nice 3-rail fence. Looks pretty.
You want a wall?
No, here's the thing though. We annex Mexico.
I think we
I
want
know somebody that we can talk to.
We annex Mexico.
He's a good brick and mortar guy.
He's a little erratic, but he's really also super into this wall.
I think the Mexicans
overnight, believe me, we'll have a nice stucco wall where that 3-rail fence was.
She's making me
and
choke.
It'll just be like, hey, all that oil production, it's all ours now.
It's mine.
80% of that country's oil production.
I don't like my avocados $3 each now, though. I tell you that much. I like my guacamole. God dang,
Did it go up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if it's that much, but it was at one point a little bit.
Yeah, no,
went
avocados and citrus went up crazy because of the friggin' cartels and
because
stuff like that.
Because he's taxing that shit.
Yeah.
He's putting the tariffs on that.
So,
I know he
put
is.
the screws to it.
Yeah, I've said for years,
Yeah.
let's just annex Mexico, make them part of Texas again.
They deserve it. They should charge us more. We're assholes.
No, he's charging them, so they have to put a higher price at the register so that they can make their percentage. That
Well,
they
right
want.
now there are major labor shortages, particularly in farm work and construction work, because everyone's terrified of ICE.
Yeah.
And ICE is pretty damn terrifying. My sister-in-law rather, she teaches at a school here in Austin. And sometimes ICE sits outside.
Yeah,
sure.
Sometimes they'll sit outside the school.
And local police sometimes don't even know about these.
No.
Yeah.
So ICE is just sitting there leveraging their people's children against them.
Jeez.
And
that's so scary.
I have real problems with attacking families in that fashion.
I can see that. Hey, if you have been a tax contributing member of this society for the last 15, 20 years, absolutely, man. If you're and this is even coming from people that I know of that became citizens from Venezuela,
because
became
we're all
citizens from countries that are literally right now like dealing with food lines and bread lines and stuff like that, and they're like, no, like I had to go through all this to become a citizen.
Unless you're not filing with like your taxes and doing that, doing Al Capone style shit.
Yeah.
Then
Al
of course,
Capone, who was a citizen, by the way.
He's abiding by laws. He's paying the same thing I'm doing. He's paying taxes.
He wasn't.
He wasn't.
Taxes.
Oh no, I'm
That's why I went to prison.
No, I'm sorry.
I think
I was still on my other rant.
We all have to keep in mind here is, if you're someone who's going to complain about undocumented immigrants in the U.S., then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, how often do I run to the cheapest lettuce?
Yep.
How often?
Absolutely.
Do I want my house made cheaper? Do I want my buildings built cheaper? All of these decisions that we make on a regular basis are based on an economy that wants cheap labor,
right?
And that can only get it from these people.
Exactly.
That we are all complicit in being allowed to, employ in this fashion, and in often cases exploit.
It comes from a society where, like we were saying earlier, I had a job where I power wash dumpsters, man. Like, that was part of my job description.
Mm-hmm.
That would typically not be a job that goes to somebody like me nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
Granted, that was like 1993, 1994. is typically not a job that would go to somebody like me.
You were a spring chicken.
The question is, how many people are willing to do that job?
Right.
Were we not in a situation where people are told that jobs are beneath them?
Right.
That's true. Which is unfortunately a case. Like we are actively teaching some children in school that jobs are beneath them.
Yeah, I mean, I made that he's going to grow up to work at a gas station joke right before the show started.
Hey, I hope so. Go work at a gas station, kid. Learn what it's like.
Yeah.
Learn what real struggle and strife is like.
I've got a guy that has a degree that I'm his boss, who obviously I don't have a degree, but it doesn't matter because I got common sense and I've got experience. And when a wine ages, that's way better. But anyways, the thing is that the kid doesn't know how to fucking mop a floor. Or he doesn't know how to wash dishes and stuff like that. And I'm told this other guy said he's got a degree.
Does it for you.
I went to school with this kid. He's got a degree. 5 years he was there, but he's got a degree. I'm like, okay.
Doesn't show you how to push a mop.
But I'm like, but he doesn't know these simple things.
I bet Liam doesn't know how to mop.
That's a question. That's a question that we have to.
And every minute I have to remind this kid of what to do, how to do.
Right.
That's a question.
Should
that
I
we
pick
have
up the
to,
ringing phone? They'll ask me.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Yes. That's how we make money. That person calling probably wants a product from you.
Oh, wow.
Go ahead.
I couldn't agree with you more in terms of
from Homes for Our
Troops. Awesome.
To know that our troops, to know that a good 65% of the homeless in America are former vets. And
it's awful.
Get no support from the VA system. Get none.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. These are the people that have gone and made a choice to help protect our civil liberties, help protect the Constitution, help protect the freedoms under which we live, yet still they're some of the most disrespected members of our society. And it's horrifying.
And they're not, they come back with special needs.
Absolutely.
And those have historically not been met.
No.
One of the things that I am happy about with Austin is Austin has made a commitment and has, I believe, actually achieved this goal of having it's not literally zero, but is essential. I think it's called essentially zero veteran homelessness. Like any homeless veteran that comes forth and says I'm a veteran, the city will get them housing
absolutely
in a certain period of time.
I have taken more than one. I used to live on the east side of town, right up off of Old Tour 35, and I'd see it all the time. Homeless vet. I took more than one person. Like, if you need help, let me show you where to get it.
Right.
And I would literally buy them a lunch and take them right down to the end of Old Torf, where the Veterans Building was.
Right, that's right.
And it's like,
that's where it is.
I don't know if you knew that if you walked 3 miles down this road, you would run into help.
Right, and they're
literally dead ends into the Veterans office,
and you will get housing.
Yeah, they will take care of you.
Having that plank of stability has been shown to. Regardless of anything else,
absolutely,
giving them a plank of stability is the first step toward stabilizing their own lives and getting their own lives.
It's reaching out. It's seeing the issue and facing the issue and confronting the issue.
Yeah,
manning up and going, "Hey, there's a problem here. Red or blue be damned. Let's look at the purple. Let's look at what's going on in the middle of our country right now." And I think that is the bigger issue, where it goes really beyond race and much more into class.
Right.
It's much more of a class struggle in our country, I think, than a racial issue and racial struggle than what people realize.
I think there is absolutely both. I think that it was LBJ though who said. I believe it was LBJ who said that if you something to the effect of if you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than a colored man, you can take the last dollar out of his pocket.
Absolutely, all day long.
And I think that I know that racism is absolutely a major issue.
I would absolutely go the opposite direction with that. At the same time, now though, Whereas at the time that LBJ said that, taking that into a modern day circumstance, I'd say it's absolutely the opposite direction as well. That it could be swung both ways. That as long as you convince anybody of that, you can take the last dollar out of their pocket.
But if you look at who has the most dollars, it's not any people of color. I mean, there are some people of color who have a lot of dollars, but the majority is still white dudes right at the top. I mean,
I don't know. I don't have those numbers in front of me. I've never had a lot of dollars in my life, so I don't consider or count myself amongst the fortunate few. With the triple, or not even triple, at least 000 college debt that I have, and things like that.
Right. I'm still in the 4 zeros, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, college debt.
I'm definitely close. I'm definitely into the 5s.
Yeah.
I'm definitely into the 5s with digits. So, it is one of those that when we look at society ourselves, and even where we were brought up from amongst this table, different stratas of society, what can we do? Please, Stephen. Anybody else need a round?
No, I'm
Stephen?
good.
No.
Yeah, I'm at 3.
What can we do? What can we begin to do to, like you said earlier, reach across the table, get past red and blue? I think that's such an issue in our society right now, and this last election was quite possibly one of the most polarizing moments in our society since literally the Civil War.
Right.
Where families started not liking each other, brothers and sisters, brothers and brothers started fighting against each other, things like that over literally political ground and political concept and ideal. What can we do as a society, as individual people, to start erasing that concept? Because I've even heard it from Julie as of late. That
what Julie said. That was
good. No, she posted something online where she was talking about, like, oh my God, it seems like nobody is listening to anybody, despite what party you belong to. Like,
right.
No Democratic senator is listening to what Democrats are trying to say. No Republican senator is listening to what Republicans are trying to say.
Right.
It's like, why can nobody just listen to what the hell we're trying to say? When you are our elected officials, when you're our elected people.
Non-partisan.
Oh no, absolutely not. But it was definitely, it was definitely this moment though of like, hey, wait a minute, this seems to be happening across the board, whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrat.
Right.
That your representatives just aren't listening to like what color stone you throw in the pot.
Yeah. Right. I think that. I'm of two minds about this. One is if people will take an opportunity to sit down or have any kind of interaction with someone who is different, who is on a different end of the spectrum, or who they just think is on a different end of the spectrum for them, and start talking about what are your common values in terms of what are the things that you care about? What are the things that you want to have happen? I know for a fact that people will align far more than they think they will.
Right.
That's right.
At the same time, I am personally not nonpartisan.
No.
So, I think that there is a reality that we're facing with right-wing media, Fox News, Breitbart, etc., where there are...
The brainwash box.
No less from the other side, though. New York Times had the release of 2 totally different articles covering the exact same event right as Trump came back.
2 different SKUs.
One was released to the Republican conservative side of Texas. One was released to the libertarian.
I remember that meme, and I believe that was shown to be fake.
No.
Okay.
It was actually released.
Okay, I'd like to see the backup on that one.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of things.
I've got the picture of the two.
Yeah, I recall the pictures, but I believe that picture was shown to be a mock-up.
Yeah.
That said, there is a difference between. There's a qualitative difference between what Fox News presents, and what Breitbart presents. Certainly,
absolutely.
Than even MSNBC. MSNBC is highly partisan. Yeah. They have that point of view. They're going for it.
Yeah.
But in terms
it's a stated point of view.
In terms of their journalistic quality, in terms of their interest in getting facts correct. I think that it's still night and day, even between MSNBC and Fox.
Oh yeah, no.
But I think that Fox News has done to our parents' generation what they thought video games would do to us.
Right.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely, absolutely, and more than one though. More than one, I think, is guilty of it. Like you said, MSNBC runs the gamut on the opposite direction, and there's more than one that is reporting things on a substantive side of information as opposed to reporting it the way a reporter is supposed to, which is just presenting you with facts and allowing you to make it your own decision. Mm-hmm. That was the original mandate of television media when it came out and when it publicly came out. And half the reason why the Smith-Mundt Act came out. Which was the act that actively prevented the U.S. government from creating government-made propaganda and disseminating it to the American people.
But now we know that they have news anchors that are CIA.
Aside from that, in 2013, the Smith-Mundt Act was struck down as part of the NDAA, which literally meant the government could now make propaganda and disseminate it to the news. That's a disturbing fact. It's there. It's real.
That's true.
Look it up.
That's why Michael Hastings died.
It's why a few people came up against the situations that they did. There was more than one anchor, more than one news person that left their job because they were trying to cover a story and they were told bury it. And they were like, no, my job is to investigate and report, despite whatever the station or whoever runs this station believes politically.
Right.
And they're like, nope, sorry, you need to go. And it's kind of horrifying.
I think my biggest concern in that area is media consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
And all that ran on the heels of every bit of this. That's what's funny is the media consolidation started running on the heels.
The MDAA
of all that
covers
happening.
All that.
Right.
I would say.
What is it? There is
gives them the right.
I'm 3 beers in, so I'm having a hard time remembering names.
Yeah.
But there's a company basically that FCC
Yeah.
FCC recently approved, I believe, for this media company whose name I cannot remember to get a much larger share of all of the national local news.
Stations.
Yes.
I remember this too because John Oliver talked about it before his hiatus.
Right, and they have what's called a must-run. They have a must-run segment, like every news show.
And it's a very conservative person who brought it out.
It is a former staffer for the Trump campaign, giving basically they have to run this segment of him talking about what the real truth is about Trump,
which is not the real truth.
Which is
nonsense. No, and that's what's hilarious.
Any one side having a monopoly is not good.
Right after Smith-Mundt Act was struck down, a year later, the Obama administration tried putting FCC regulators into newsrooms. And I remember Justice Scalia being on Fox News and looking directly at the camera and pointing at it and going, "Listen, news director, if they try to come in and tell you to run a certain story, you tell them to come to me and get the friggin' warrant to be able to come in and tell you to run a story, and I guarantee you they will be denied." That was put out straight forth that they were trying to put in news regulators into newsrooms that approved messages would go out. And it's that's horrifying.
Well, if you want to go on another side,
it's amazing that what you were saying about getting views from different angles. Like I've never heard of that. And, and I like my personally, when I hear that, I say I have real doubts about the facts behind that story. So I'd love to find the stories behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I Googled it. I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
let Google come up, and I can actively find them while we discuss.
Right. Sure. But that does again get to sort of the separation that
absolutely
the algorithms that run our lives.
Yeah.
Right.
And what about like 3 months ago? I want to think it was like 3 months ago. RT got their media credentials revoked, and so they're not like recognized as credible media, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it is a Russian propaganda station.
Right. So that seems okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a Russian station.
Yeah, it's a Russian station, and it's like, okay, well, whatever, It just limits a person's, like, if they were going there or watching that.
Al Jazeera.
I was going to say Al Jazeera.
At one point, too.
Yeah.
Does not stop people from watching Al Jazeera.
But it's
Al Jazeera is pretty widely
source,
accepted
though.
source.
I like them. I watch them for.
Yeah, RT. I wouldn't trust anything RT point.
Mildly, a short 15 years ago, when things happened, Al Jazeera's stuff was revoked in the U.S. as well.
Right. When those beheadings started, when the beheading videos came out,
you don't think that. So we don't think that. So we don't think that the RT's revocation is a backlash either. Then
I don't know.
Is what you're saying? It seems like a pretty big backlash to me.
Well, I mean, to direct,
it's an international news source
because they're not really saying anything
to direct state action.
Per se.
RT, is there any media company in Russia that Putin does not control?
No.
Yes or
probably
no?
not.
Probably.
Yes
not.
Is there any communication? There were just as many reports in the New York Times against Obama regarding
But he handles criticism fine. That's
sure. But the question comes down to authoritarianism ultimately.
Yes.
And when you're talking about a former constitutional lawyer and teacher of constitutional law saying it's okay to use extrajudicial drone strikes against American citizens, not just on foreign soil but on U.S. soil,
I think we were a little off.
That's a little much. Not really. Because that's authoritarianism, and that's exactly what they're standing for.
Right. Well, we're talking right now about...
We did judge, jury, all in one.
We're a little off. Yeah, we're a little off.
I don't think that Indivisible is pro-drone strike.
That's all I could think when you
we were talking about RT.
Sure.
And I was making the statement that, yes, in fact, there are media organizations that are not controlled by the U.S., the federal government in the U.S., and I also made the statement that does anyone actually believe that there are media organizations in Russia, major media organizations in Russia, that are not pretty much directly under Putin's control?
Because it's an entirely different type of government.
I do not believe that I believe that RT is essentially under the Kremlin's control, and so it basically is acting as a source of propaganda.
Right.
Do they do some fact finding? Perhaps. But in terms of are they a viable news source as opposed to a propaganda outlet?
Right.
But it's the same thing with Al Jazeera and the same issue that they had with Al Jazeera.
It's almost back in the early 90s. But Al Jazeera wasn't backing a state actor.
It's almost the same thing as anybody on social media.
They were by releasing the Osama bin Laden videos and his mission statements.
You gotta just know bullshit when you see it.
But
which is why their stuff was revoked, because he was releasing like his response videos and stuff like that. So it's happened more than
Wouldn't
once.
you have to know that at the same time as when you're on social media, just knowing how to recognize bullshit, or do your fact finding, or do due diligence yourself?
Well, no,
because
that's
there's so
just
much stuff that is on there that is fake.
You do have to do your due diligence.
Because could you
have to
believe
make sure that you're
the alien landed in Minnesota tonight, or or whatever it may be.
I heard about that.
You know what I mean? Like you can put some in people like my mom says stuff, but I mean she's easy to confuse, but. But you will get people to believe stories that are just boom, and it's like no.
My mom yesterday tried to convince me that I should just pray away my medical issues and stop seeing doctors.
Yeah.
I was like, love you, Mom.
It's like you're reading bullshit.
To the doctor.
Like you can look at this, but know what you're reading and like try to . I mean, you might have to look it up or something later to figure it out, but at least figure it out. And
And in order to become, to get DACA certification, they had to go through a process that involves, background checks. None of them. There is not a DACA recipient who has a criminal record. They have to be either gainfully employed, or seeking further education. So these are folks who are paying taxes, really model
contributing
citizens,
a lot to the economy.
No criminal background, who only know the U.S. They are essentially undocumented Americans.
All those things you said, they need to stay here then.
Right, exactly. So that's what we're
and
working
so
on.
that's what we're encouraging. But we're running up on the 8th, which is tomorrow.
Day after.
Tomorrow. Day after. Is once again the government's going to run out of money, and we don't have a solution here.
Well, and Trump just said today that he welcomes the shutdown.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no, he said it like 3 times. He said, shut down, shut down, shut down.
And hey,
not just on Twitter.
He doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
There is this mix of with everything that the administration does. There is a mix of incompetence and malevolence.
For sure.
I love that. I want that on a T-shirt.
Granted, the beautiful,
for sure on that.
Quite honestly, one of the beautiful things about the office of president is that you do not have to be a politician to hold it. All you have to do.
Basic knowledge would be neat, though.
Sure, he's got some basic knowledge of what some certain people need. But quite literally, so that nothing is overturned, stuff like that. Other than the turkey every year.
Yeah, there's no.
That's true.
I knew there was a primo time of like. You're saying you can do it anytime, but you do it at the end, so nothing gets overturned.
But there's no process for overturning a presidential pardon.
No.
But so that there's no political backlash that actually affects you because you're a lame duck. What are they going to do?
Right. What are they going to do?
I would say that one of the big lessons.
Wasn't the worst person, but said straight up in numerous things, I run things with a pen and a phone. And you can't have a constitutional lawyer saying you run things with a pen and a phone. You just can't.
That was a BlackBerry, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can't have somebody saying that they run the government by presidential edict. Period.
Right. I mean,
that's extrajudicial power. That's extra power from the Constitution, and that utterly eliminates the powers of the Constitution as laid by the Constitution for the president.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that has been holding up fairly well has been the court system in terms of executive orders are a real thing, and they have been a real thing for as long as there's been the United States.
Well, as long as we've had the imperial presidency in charge of the United States,
I believe,
and as long as we've had a commander in chief,
I believe Washington issued executive orders. Yeah. So then it's
because he was commander in chief,
right?
And that's the problem with having a fully funded army. As long as you have a fully funded army all the time, constantly, you forever have a commander in chief. You don't ever have an actual president, which means that commander in chief can write executive orders ad hoc and do whatever he wants. And that's the problem with having a constantly funded army as opposed to a constitutionally funded army, which means when you need it, you raise it.
Well, we're always and that was
right.
And that was the danger exactly that former President Eisenhower, the last person that we had that was actually a high-ranking member of military, whenever he left office, his last speech was beware the industrial military complex. You have given up some of your rights to these people.
Right.
In order so that we could win the Second World War, you need to take them back.
Yeah.
You need to take these rights away from the private sector. You need to take them away from the industrial military complex
in the future,
so that they won't be misused and so that this office of presidency won't be misused. Like, I was sworn to defend the Constitution as a soldier, and I'm here to tell you, your Constitution has been eliminated.
Right.
It's gone. The president can now, as long as we're in a state of war, say anything he wants, and it is.
Well,
and that's a problem when it comes to the checks and balances.
I think, well...
Until that point, we had a constitutionally funded, funded army. Whenever we had a need, we called up the army.
Sure.
It sounds like Caesar and Rome and all that.
There is,
a little bit.
I'm no fan of the military-industrial complex.
Me neither.
I would be curious about any possible scenario in which there is a practical way of having any our security needs met without.
We could absolutely have our security needs met so long as they're done by a state and local government. I would challenge you to find any case in which the TSA has actively found somebody that poses a threat or that was a threat. It hasn't happened since their founding.
Well, they've certainly stopped people that do have weapons.
Actually, no. Yeah. That was the FBI, quite a few other people.
No. The TSA has stopped people with weapons in the airport.
Oh, yeah, screening, all the time.
They're dumb to even try.
Sure.
And
totally.
not
but
all
regular security screening would do that to begin with. Without the need of TSA, and I make the point all the time that we're the security guard at Pulse nightclub.
Indivisible is
actively
overseeing TSA
doing
these
shot.
days?
Yeah.
Wow, you guys are
powerful. as far as authoritarianism goes, and if they're fighting authoritarianism, that's one of the things that we have to be concerned about, is when the government says you as a person can't have your rights to travel. So, by default...
You have your rights to travel, you just have to take your shoes off.
Okay. And at the same time, there are people that are being profiled on the regs.
I got fate.
There are people that are
but
being...
they still make it onto the plane. They shouldn't be profiled. That's terrible.
That's horrifying, and it's done regularly.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! I know my stepbrother was here recently with his girlfriend, and she has to travel to Iran and Vietnam for work. And we had to fly with them, and they have to get to the airport an hour early because every time immigration
That's right.
their passport,
sure.
That's right.
They have to take her into a room and be like, "Why are you in these places? What were you doing there?" And she's like, "I'm in advertising. I sell soy milk. That's all I was doing."
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's a little much.
And those are the things that we're up against now as a society,
an
as a
hour
people.
Early. She was fine. She didn't mind.
Sure, and some people are allowable with that. Some people are not. And granted, you're allowed to not be.
Yep.
By all constitutional right, you're allowed to not be until the point that you are considered a suspect.
Why are you detained? Why are you detaining me?
Right.
Yeah, and that's where civil liberties come in, and that's where...
And they still will violate that at TSA for sure.
These issues are ongoing.
Because that doesn't matter over there.
They've been ongoing for the last 20 years.
Longer than that. But
exactly.
I think that one of the biggest concerns for me in terms of authoritarianism, at least in this new administration, has been Trump's behavior when it comes to interacting with the media, calling out fake news,
sure,
saying that the New York Times should be shut down,
right,
saying that certain members of the media are out to get him and should be prosecuted, wanting to open up the libel laws. There are things that an individual citizen can say that hold a different weight when you're the president.
Yes.
When you're the president,
right,
your voice is the voice of the executive branch, and so there's something called a chilling effect on free speech. So that when the president says, the New York Times is fake news, they should be shut down, et cetera, et cetera. Right. That is the executive branch actively and intentionally trying to have a chilling effect on the First Amendment for personal benefit.
Okay.
And that, to me, has been probably one of the most disturbing.
But that wasn't laid forth by him, though. The strikedown of the Smith-Mundt Act in 2013 took care of that.
Well, no, but the fact that he is saying what he is saying now...
Yeah, but he's only allowed to say what he's saying now because the Smith-Mundt Act is struck down.
I would say that there's a strong case for him not to be able to say that.
Right.
At this point, because the chilling effect on First Amendment rights is a well-established...
Oh, absolutely. But the problem is with the striking down of the Smith-Mundt Act in 2013 to begin with, you've now made legal government-made propaganda.
government-made propaganda. I don't know what the Smith-Mundt Act is.
The Smith-Mundt Act.
Yeah, I know what you're telling me what the Smith-Mundt Act is, and I know that you are saying that it was struck down in 2013. Sure. I don't know the specifics, and so I can't really argue about that right now. What I can argue,
feel free to look it up.
Discuss about, I will look it up. What I can talk about is
because it's more than disturbing.
I'm sure it is. What I can talk about is that. Well, I think I've already said what I can talk about.
Yeah.
Is that...
I'm with you.
At least on behalf of the people that you're working with, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I'm just saying it as somebody who has been silenced. I have had episodes of my podcast, edited, struck down.
Yeah,
we have been banned in certain countries.
Not in this country, though.
But... No.
Right.
Not in this country. You're absolutely right.
But now without net neutrality... That is certainly something that can happen.
It was something that could happen to begin with. And the problem is when you give control of the internet to the FCC and then whose only purview as someone in communications, their only purview is to write, regulate, and disseminate licenses for on-air broadcast. So when you give the control of the internet to them and do not rewrite their mission statement to include the internet, you have a very dangerous and precarious situation.
Is that more dangerous than?
Yes.
I disagree strongly. So let me ask.
As a freshman Senator Obama said it.
Striking down what?
Freshman Senator Obama himself said that the internet itself was the last bastion of free speech known to man.
And yet, net neutrality is in fact the standard that would protect that, as opposed to striking down net neutrality and saying that the FCC, that nobody, essentially, the statement is essentially that nobody is able to protect net neutrality because
then why would the policies for the FCC go into place with news controllers in newsrooms before net neutrality went into place?
I don't know anything about that. What I do know about is. And I'm very pleased that you're that you know about that, and I don't.
Because that to me is a huge part of authoritarianism.
You know, I would agree. I would agree with that, and I'm happy. I will definitely look up that article, and try to find what the facts are and if there's any nuance there. My concern with net neutrality is. That without the standard of the common carrier standard, is that now it's Verizon that gets to choose.
Oh,
it's
no,
Comcast
absolutely.
That gets to choose.
The problem is the fact that even with net neutrality in place, the FCC did not even abide by their own guidelines and did not even provide equal coverage in places.
At least there were guidelines. Now it's
but
whoever
if
has
there are guidelines, then abide by them. If you're the one that wrote the guidelines, FCC, why are you not abiding by them? Why are you throttling down content to rural areas like you said you weren't going to do? Which is what happened. They've already shown the fact that rural areas have gotten less broadband speed than what they were supposed to get, everything else. So you're actively, what you said was that you were going to unthrottle things to everybody, but you actively throttled it to certain people.
But did the FCC do that? Or
yes.
At the FCC pushed a button that because I don't think those internet hubs run through the FCC offices.
They do now. That was the idea.
Well, they
would run through them, and that the FCC would assure the fact that everybody got regulated.
That people should abide by.
Okay, but that's the problem. Is that then they're supposed to enforce said regulations, and when said people do not get the broadband access they're supposed to get, the FCC is supposed to go, hey, providers, why are they not getting the broadband access?
Add that to the list of
enforcement
things
is a process.
Authoritarianism.
Enforcement is a process that has to be gone through. However, now no one has the ability to regulate internet providers.
Right.
No one, because they said the FCC has they said we'll pass this on to the FCC, but the FCC specifically does not have that.
Right.
Does not have that.
No, they don't. And quite honestly, here's the thing: without rewriting the purview of the FCC, neither did the FCC. And that was my point. Without rewriting their whole mission statement and without rewriting their whole reason for existence, the FCC did not have control over that to begin with.
That may be,
So that was illusory. Like their whole reason for existence as someone in broadcast for years is to write, regulate, and disseminate the licensing for broadcast. Nothing more. Mm-hmm. Nothing more. That was their whole purview. Was if you were a broadcast entity, they regulated what you put out.
I guess that depends on what the definition of broadcast
is
going to come down to legally.
And that's what it comes down to is when does this become broadcast?
Right
when
now,
do they have control over the last bastion of free speech known as podcasting?
They don't have free speech control. Fuck that.
Dude, there's blogs. There's
every bit of it.
Speaking
and
of
that's
blogs,
just it. The whole internet became under their purview, and they did not rewrite that
slow
purview.
down anything that isn't.
They didn't rewrite their
money for their
whole,
pocketbook.
What they're in control of.
Capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think.
Hey,
well,
you know that
again,
podcast? They talk too much of
yeah,
Yeah,
Turn them
it's
down.
getting late. We're
again,
way off
into the
topic.
weeds on the minutia of language. I think that there probably is an argument to be made there regarding the FCC. However, I do think that somebody does have to be able to enforce regulations on the providers.
That's what ICANN.
That's what I think. So yeah.
So
I don't think it's going to happen.
ICANN is the international registry.
Well, yeah, but ICANN is not going to be involved in access issues.
There's always going to be lobbyists and people that with money involved to say that, hey, turn this guy down or turn this down or turn something down, and they've got money, and that will be the ruler of the whole goddamn thing. There it is. I've already solved it. It's over.
It does kind of come down to money.
The problem.
It's all goddamn money.
But it doesn't have to be all just the money. Because, again, we do live in a
it's not going to be fair,
republic,
guaranteed.
a democratic republic, and
it.
it's all about what we as citizens choose to do.
Right,
Thank you.
And if you call your representatives, you tell them what you think, and you tell them why you think it, and you tell them that they will pay a price.
And you get active.
Find a local chapter
That's just
whatever the fuck
you make
in.
You make connections with your neighbors.
Right.
You talk about things that maybe felt uncomfortable.
Just like this show.
But are important. And then you go to indivisibleaustin.com or look up Indivisible Austin on Facebook and sign up for our weekly emails, and so that we can combine our efforts on those things.
That's it. Next week and meet your candidates.
It's number one. It's getting past the mentality of us versus them. We have to get past that mentality as a society, and we have to find, like we did tonight, common ground. Where even people that ideologically have different sets can at least find some common ground to agree upon of things that are like, oh my God, this is going on, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, like there are some logical things that if you sit down and look at it, like I think all of us across the board can agree are horrible things, are okay things.
Right.
And we need to find that common ground. We need to search for that common ground so hard in this day and age because we are so entirely narcissistic. We are so entirely driven by online media. Like there's a reason why it's been shown that the CIA games people on online media because it's a great way to litmus test and to see how society is going and how society is moving.
They test us every day, I'm sure.
And it's done on the regs.
I don't live
I'm sure they got a CIA agent.
Never leave my house.
It's been shown to be done.
What's the collective consciousness today of this fucking
on that
nation?
last note, let's talk one last time about where people can go to find out information from Indivisible Austin about indivisible.org, where they can get involved in their local government, what they can do to bring this awareness to other people.
Go to indivisibleaustin.com. Sign up for our weekly emails. Well, first of all, look around and see what you think about what we're doing. And look around. Also, we have links to the other smaller local. There are many, many small local groups and many, many meetups that are all listed on our events. Sign up for our emails. Make calls. Come out with us when we're protesting. Make sure your legislators know what you think about things. Get registered to vote. Yesterday was the deadline to get registered for Texas's very early primaries. I hope everyone is registered.
Yes.
Vote. They're coming up pretty soon. I think early March. Figure out who you want to vote for. That can be tough, especially when you get down
Jesse
to
Ventura
judges.
didn't run this last one where I would have voted for him.
He is off the grid, man.
Yeah.
And then,
way to plug your show.
Again, that is one of Texas's biggest failures. It's not either. It's really not a red or a blue state. It's a non-voting state.
That was a joke.
Right, yeah.
Only 75% of people who are eligible to vote are registered. Half of them vote even in a presidential election.
That's right.
And when it comes down to a state that does lean one way or the other, most of that comes down to the primaries. Only about 15 or 20% of the people vote in primaries.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
if there is a runoff, and this is what happened. Well, this is why we have Ken Paxton as our lieutenant governor. If there's a runoff, 3% of people vote.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that is how Ken Paxton got not Ken Paxton. He's our indicted attorney general.
I was going to say,
that's not even us, folks. That is most state and local governments.
But Texas
it is the fact that
Texas is really bad at it, and it's also intentional.
We're great about voting the incumbent in.
Yeah.
And that is something that we have to get rid of, folks. That's something, like I said, early, and base your testimony on more than 1 to 2 sources.
Well, at least subscribe to a newspaper instead of just getting all your news from Facebook.
Yes.
Try not to get all your news from
Facebook.
No,
absolutely.
And Facebook needs to fess up on the fact that they are a media organization.
Oh no, they have, and it's come out.
You get 80%,
and it's come out. It's come out quite obviously that they skew things quite on the regs.
There's you should do a show. You should do a show on AI and the algorithms.
Oh no!
Yes,
we're working on that. We're working on that.
We love it.
Believe me, because the AI that runs that stuff.
I did virtual reality in here one day, and I was
like, that's the thing, is that you're not gonna get an opposing point of view on social media. You're gonna get 90% of what you check already.
I was.
And to go to social media.
And also bad sources that appeal to your passions.
And good God, on that note, folks, I can't thank you enough for coming in tonight. It was absolutely enlightening, absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. One more time, tell everybody where they can go to find stuff for Indivisible Austin.
IndivisibleAustin.com, Indivisible ATX, at Indivisible ATX on Twitter and on Facebook. Just look for Indivisible Austin.
Absolutely. And while you're online checking that out, please make sure to check out dudesandbeer.com. Make sure to check out the Dudes and Beer Facebook group where you can see all these awesome news stories during the week. Also, make sure to check out our parent station, HCUniversalNetwork.com, and all of the awesome content there. Until next time, everybody, remember, if you can't be good, be good at it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams and chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for both Android and iDevices, available on the Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, drink responsibly.